to the Therapist's Invitation. I'm Mark Mayfield.
And I'm Trever Shirin.
And today we thought we would try something a little bit different. It might seem somewhat familiar to other topics that we've talked about, but
really, what conversations are not similar to
other things? Okay, that's good. Makes me feel better about coming up with this topic today.
Yeah.
But the idea of the only constant we can count on is change.
Yep.
And I know that's going to rub some people the wrong way just because we want to be in control. And kind of indicative of change is that we have to let go of control. So kind of the topic I want to talk about today, and we'll see where we go from there.
Yep.
But before we do that,
Something good for me is going to be something real simple.
Okay.
I got a pour over this morning of a Costa Rica blend. And there are some mornings, I'm sure a lot of people can relate to this. There are some mornings that your coffee just hits so good. Like nothing's really all that different, but that morning coffee's real good. And that's this morning for me.
Coffee snob.
I try not to be. I'm not as much as I used to be in like 2014.
Well, true. And I'm not as much as some other people that I know. So not to be named nameless. I think something good for me is I was, my wife and I, so by the time that you listen to this, it'll be already done. Mm-hmm. But we get to go on a kind of a marriage weekend coming up.
That's awesome.
But it's in the mountains of New Mexico. And I was checking the weather for the mountains. And like the daytime.
Did you say Mexico or New Mexico?
New Mexico.
Okay.
New Mexico. Thank you. It's about 3 hours away from our house.
Yeah.
And the daytime temperature is going to be like 51, 52, and nighttime is like 17. And I love that kind of that weather.
Yeah.
I love, in the mountains, especially curling up in a blanket, fireplace going, that kind of stuff. So
good for you.
Looking forward to that kind of stuff.
The things I need to feel human are a shower in the morning every morning. And to not be super frigid cold all night. Okay. And so camping is like the opposite of that. My family's going on a camping trip this weekend with my 4-month-old. So really looking forward to that.
No sleep.
Yeah. I mean, you can tell I chose coffee as my something good, not my camping trip. I'm excited. It's going to be a lot of fun.
For all of our listeners, you can send coffee to, no, I'm just kidding.
But I'm not excited for the change of environment that I'm going to experience this weekend.
Is it like 2 nights or 1 night?
2 nights. I know. It's going to be a struggle for me.
The only camping experience I had was when our oldest was 4 months old and she spent the whole night screaming.
Yeah. Fortunately, we're driving ourselves. We're going up with my family, but we're driving ourselves. And so I can change things pretty easily if I need to and just come home.
Because that's good because she woke up screaming 5, maybe less than a year old, and we ended up having to like strap her in the car seat in the Jeep that we had at the time, and we slept air quotes for those that don't in the Jeep, and she finally calmed down, and we haven't been camping since.
Oh.
Yeah, that's almost.
My wife really likes camping,
almost
so I'm willing to go out of my comfort zone, go into an environment that I don't have any control over, that I can't like do all the things that make me feel comfortable.
For those listening too, it's going to be middle of October, and mountain temperatures get.
We're in a cabin though. That was my one stipulation.
Okay, so it's not really camping then.
It is for me.
Okay, it's okay. I see where your head's at.
So anyways, Mark, I've been trying to pass this off to you several times.
I know, but I keep on going deeper and deeper here.
And out of my environment.
I'm just intrigued by how flustered you're getting by
it'll be good, but it's going to be hard.
So so the idea of change, the only thing we can count on is change. Yeah. Like, why do you feel like that messes with people so much?
Well, whenever I work with young clients and their parents especially, actually solely their parents, let me rephrase that entirely then. So whenever I'm working with the parents of my young clients,
there we go.
I always try to communicate that like there's a couple things that you're going to be able to do that are going to set your kid up for success. Mm. The first is to have your fundamentals of discipline and parenting. What are the things that you're able to maintain even on the worst day, so that you can offer consistency? If your kid knows this is the bottom threshold, this is going to be consistent.
Right.
and add on to that later. The other thing is have consistency in your scheduling and your communication of what's about to happen, because as human beings, and especially as children,
right,
we crave structure, we crave consistency, we crave predictability.
Sure.
Because there's a sense of safety, there's a sense of understanding, competence, control, managing. If I know that you're about to throw a baseball to me, it's easier for me to catch than if I don't.
Right. Okay.
And I think that's just an element of us as human beings. And some people do it better than others. Some people might be like me, where they are very adaptable, but that adapting part hurts real bad.
Oh my gosh. Yes.
So like you're still like, it's a weird place because you're like, yeah, I do adapt very well, but man, does it get me sometimes.
Well, I think I'm the same way. I adapt pretty well. And I in some ways it's kind of it's tension. I enjoy change and I hate change.
Yeah.
Like, and so it's like, this tension, but it's because I'm an empath, I feel all the feelings, and we'll talk a little bit about, next episode, we're going to talk about, this idea of we can feel the feelings, just don't hurt people in the process. So I think, I think that's an interesting point, that change brings up a lot of stuff, even if you like change.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, the tension of it. One of our dear friends, David Galvan, says this in our parent talks. We've talked about this quite a bit, that there's like 3 buckets: things that you can change.
Okay.
Right. Basically, or things that you can control. Sorry, not change. Things that you can control.
Okay.
So when change happens, what can you control? Well, basically, it's really simple.
Thoughts, feelings.
Like how you react. Thoughts, feelings, right? What you can influence is the next bucket. So, okay, I can control these things. What can I influence?
Yeah.
And then the other bucket is what I can't change or control. And we have to really recognize those 3 things. And I think when change happens, we tend to go over here to the things that I can't control, and we try to hold on desperately to that and try to manipulate and control and that kind of stuff. And that's, I think, human nature.
Yeah.
But like, how much more free would we be if we recognize, okay, I can't control that. I can sit with these emotions. I can control the emotions and thoughts, but I can't do anything about what just happened.
Well, if you go back to our conversation about, I think, disappointment or big problems, I think it was probably throughout a lot of conversations.
Right. It's interesting. It's COVID-19 conversations we're having, right?
Well, and at the beginning of COVID, Julia and I, Julia Watson is the host of Monday Minute, and she and I got together and we did a video announcing some of the changes that were going to happen to Monday Minute and just trying to communicate that clearly. And we talked about locus of control, which is what we've kind of talked around. And it's this idea that you have a circle, and outside that circle you can't control. Inside the circle you can control/manage. And so going back to our conversation about big problems, it's really about understanding what are the things that you have influence over. And if they're past your influence, how much time are you giving to worrying about them or fretting over them? And is that a reasonable amount for, because obviously I can't go about not worrying about certain things that are outside of my control, because they're important things, like I can't control whether or not my house is currently on fire.
Right.
I might worry about that, but it would be really unhealthy for me to worry about that a lot right now. And maybe it's just, having the thought of, what if my house is on fire? Well, then I'm going to go home to it and it's not going to be there, and we'll figure it out from there.
Right. Moving
on to whatever is next right now. And we don't do that very well as a culture. We're a pretty worryful culture. I was reviewing a training from 2 years ago with our friend Steve Earle, and he cited some research that showed that only 15% of what we worry about ever comes to fruition.
If that.
Right.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. And then he broke it down further, where it's like 2% of that is actually like
it happened
legitimate or something. But yeah, like this sense of worry and this sense of change. And I think we can feel feelings about change, but we can also feel feelings about the potential of change.
Right. And I think there's a big distinction there. And I think that's where, like you said, worry, anxiety kick in.
Yeah.
Is if we're thinking about the potential for change, are we really living in the moment, which could be a whole nother conversation about what it means to live in the moment.
For sure.
I think the reason I wanted to bring this topic up is we shouldn't be surprised by change, but we shouldn't be holding our breath.
Yeah.
That it's coming around the corner. Like,
yeah.
Does that make sense? Like,
don't dread something you don't know is going to happen, right. But also be ready for change.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And, you know, I think it's interesting. I get a little frustrated with people sometimes, and this is my own stuff to own, right? But I get frustrated with people sometimes when they are just so put off by change.
And what do you mean by that?
Meaning like it was a personal offense, or it was like, you know, how dare you, or how dare the world, or how dare, you know, whatever. And I'm like,
do you think that's entitlement?
I don't know. I think there's a part of it that might be, but I also think it might just be a natural trigger reaction that like, I just got comfortable. Like, how dare you change things?
Oh yeah.
And I'm like, okay.
Right.
Fair. I get this. I see where you're coming from.
We can still be therapists and validate what you're feeling is what you're feeling.
And why are you taking it as a personal offense? Yeah. Like, do some self-reflection on that. Like I was talking to a friend the other day, and we were just talking about where we're at with COVID and some things that have been happening and that kind of stuff. And he looked at me and he goes, I'm a simple guy. Like, I get to put food on the table. I haven't missed a meal since COVID happened. I've been sleeping in my house that I own. Right. You know, I have a car that, you know, doesn't have a car payment.
Yeah.
And yeah, some things have changed, but I look at the end of the month and I'm like, I got a little extra to put in savings. Like, I'm blessed.
Right.
But we don't think that way sometimes, you know? And I think that, so maybe it is entitlement. I don't know. What do you think? Like I'm that's kind of wrestling with that a little bit.
Yeah. Well, I think there's two ends of the spectrum, or at least I'm going to act as if there's two.
You're going to create two ends of the spectrum.
A false dichotomy. On one end of the spectrum, we have the very privileged who may err on the side of entitlement.
Sure.
And then in the other side of the spectrum, we have the less privileged who may err on the side of a trauma response where it's change doesn't actually matter because that's just the lot that we've been given. Sure. And that I think like, you know, on the spectrums of bad responses, we have the entitlement, which is a bad response of like, how dare you change this? I don't deserve to be treated this way or to have things changed on me.
Right.
The other side is, well, yeah, of course, change is going to happen. Like, duh, it always happens to me. And I never get comfortable because it's not worth it because something's going to come and mess that up and blah, blah. And that I would consider to be more of a trauma response. And the appropriate or healthy response isn't necessarily somewhere in the middle, though I think it could be, but it's somewhere along the lines of, this hurts. Let me validate my own feelings because I'm going to experience feelings because something's changed. Whether it's good or bad, like the world constantly moves, and if we're living beings in this world, we're going to have feelings about things that are changing and moving and being different. And also having the response of, how can I do this part well?
Sure.
And that's hard. That takes a lot of emotional intelligence. That takes a lot of just health as a person. And there may be some days that, you know, a really healthy, mature person does that really well, and the very next day they do it really poorly.
Sure. And I think therein lies grace.
Yeah.
Right. Okay. It's like, you know, some stuff happened about last week for me, and I realized I didn't handle it as well as I usually do, and I had to take a step back and go, why? There's that awareness piece of let's reevaluate. I think, though, that sometimes when we have either end of the spectrum that you just said, the entitlement side or the trauma response, there's not awareness around those.
Yeah, a lot of the time that's true.
Right. So it's, you know, you're responding with entitlement.
Yeah. Well, and if you think about what I said with the healthy response, it starts with validating feelings. And you've said for several years now, the first step to emotional intelligence is being able to name your feelings.
Right.
And so, and maybe there's a step zero of being aware that you have feelings. We can talk about that later.
We're not, you know, robots.
Yeah. But like, even, we had a team meeting recently that was really, really, really hard and affected everybody. And I was affected by it. And even though, it didn't really change my thoughts or feelings about what we're doing or anything like that, I still had feelings.
Sure.
And was still engaged emotionally with what was happening and had to sit with that and say like, okay, this was hard for me as a person, and I need to make sure that I take care of myself today and take the opportunities that I can to maybe just, nurse my heart a little bit. Even though it's not something that was devastating to me change-wise and not something that was, totally out of the blue for me, but it was something that was hard.
Yeah.
And sometimes we just experience change, and it can be really, really, really good, like what this meeting was about, or it can be something that's really, really, really bad, like, hey, everybody has to self-quarantine and all the businesses are shut down.
Wait, what? We did that?
So like there's that spectrum too. But in any case, like, it's really important to recognize that you're going to have feelings about it, and that's not wrong.
Right.
This will lead well into, next week's conversation.
So I think on that note, let's pause for a second and talk about, something that we're doing at Mayfield, or, something that we can, that's or a highlight.
Yeah.
Something that's good.
Good. So one of the things that I'm going to highlight, just because it's my little baby, is the Monday Minute and Therapist Invitation and our Meet Mayfield videos and all of the different resources that we try to do here at Mayfield. I've been doing a lot of looking around at different practices in the nation.
Right.
And there aren't many organizations that are providing actionable tools for non-clinicians.
Yes.
There's quite a few tools for clinicians because, that's necessary. But I also think it's really necessary to make sure that moms and dads and teens and peers and students and teachers and just people are able to feel equipped on, like, a teacher. My student just came to me and said that they're cutting and suicidal, or my friend just told me that they're feeling really depressed, and I have no idea what to say. I responded by trying to fix it, and that didn't seem to be helpful. And so being able to provide some resources on, like, hey, when this sort of situation happens, here's a really positive way to experience that and to engage. And so you can find that on Mayfield Counseling Center's YouTube page. You can find it on the Facebook page, hopefully other places as we go forward. But they're just a great ongoing free resource.
Yeah, it's good.
That's halfway decently produced.
Give yourself some more credit.
It's halfway well produced.
It's fun to watch the first one and to see where we are today. And so it's just the progression's fun, especially like with our podcast too. Right? Man, I like that. Well, and the resources too, I think, help in these conversations too. Yeah, like, how do I manage change? Well, we talked about GLAD, and we've talked about mindfulness, and we've talked about
locus of control.
All those kind of things. Yeah. So I think that's good. Just a good touch point. So totally awesome. Yeah. So I think I'd love to actionable steps, actionable items for those that are listening. So how do we talked a lot about it, maybe people are recognizing, okay, maybe I'm erring on the entitlement side, maybe I'm erring on the triggered side, or maybe I'm someplace in the middle. Maybe I like change, but I don't like change, and maybe, whatever. So what would be like your top two takeaways of how to manage?
Here are my top two.
Yes.
The first one is reflect on how you've handled change in the past.
Okay.
To recognize two key elements. How long did it take you before those feelings weren't tolerable again? Right.
So like when did they start becoming more familiar and not so painful?
Okay. Yeah. When were you, like, did it take you a whole day to get to the point where you were able to, talk about it without being overwhelmed?
Sure.
So figure that out as you're reflecting. The second thing is, like, what happened to help you through that process?
Yeah.
You may discover, every time that I've gone through a major change, I've gone and taken a bath.
Right.
That's really valuable information. So reflect.
Okay.
And then the second one is create a action plan. So that the next time that a major change happens and my feelings feel intolerable, I have this piece of paper that I can pull out and it says, hey, Trevor, big change just happened. Just remember that it usually takes you about 24 hours to work through those feelings. Here are the things that have helped you in the past. I want to encourage you, choose 2 of these things to do in the next 24 hours and, list it out. Take a bath, call a friend, watch, office bloopers. Here's the action plan that you have available to you. And then we can do more work after that. So this is more like a crisis response plan, sure. But I think that can be really valuable in preparing you for change in a way that's not like dread.
Yeah, no, it's good. And I was thinking about this, there's been a lot of change happening. And so, as a leader trying to respond to that change and people's reactions, one of my friends sent me this picture and it just says, as you're listening, think about your tone, think about the rate that you're speaking, think about your breathing, think about your listening, think about what you're going to say before you say it, think about what questions that might be asked, think about how you might encourage that, so it's a little bit different, but it's my response to somebody's response to change. But I think that's also important for us to maybe reflect on as I'm reacting to change. What is my tone? Yeah. What is my breath? What is my response? What questions could I ask? What are my emotions? So it's that awareness piece. The greatest advice I was ever given when something happens that really affects you was to write out how you felt without censoring, and then sleep on it. Right, like you talked about. Is it 24 hours?
Yeah, don't email it. Don't type it in an email.
I've made that mistake.
Don't do that.
Probably 10 years ago, 12 years ago.
Don't do that.
Did not happen. Did not react well. Didn't turn out well. But sit with it. Yeah. Sleep on it. Then come back and reread it and go, oh man, that was a lot of emotion. Yep. It was okay.
Who was the author that said write drunk, edit sober?
Yes. I don't remember who it was.
I don't remember who it was, but
same drunk on emotions. Yeah. So then come back and edit it. And then if you need to have that conversation with somebody, or if you need to send that email, or if you need to, now it's not your emotional, because you can't take that emotion stuff back. Right. But how often, and I'm speaking to myself, like I'm got a lot of experience therapy-wise, but I still fall into that trap.
Yeah. Isn't it a bummer that we as therapists don't get to like become perfect human beings at the end of our career?
That'd be awesome. But we are human, and we still need, part of the reason we talk about these things is that we need them ourselves.
Oh
right?
my gosh.
So I think those things, right? Just pay attention. Yeah. And I know for me that when something big happens, it takes me about 4 to 7 days for the emotions to go away completely. Yep. It takes me about 24 hours for the intensity of those emotions. Yeah. But then about 4 to 7 days. And this goes back to the conversation that I have with my clients. That I think I've shared with this on the podcast of what it means to be old friends with your emotions. Yep. Like,
I'd be shocked if you haven't.
So for me, it's like when my anxiety pops up, because I can't control people's responses, I can go, okay, I'm going to sit with that. Yeah. I'm going to breathe into it. And, I can feel that as I'm talking right now. But like, it's going to be here for maybe 24 hours. Yeah. And the intensity will go away.
Yep. Yeah. I love it. Well, so your challenge is contemplate how you manage change. Think about the inevitability of change.
A big word.
Yeah.
It's coming.
I used it a lot when we did our death show.
Oh, yeah.
Just to stack on, like, change is happening, death's coming.
Yeah.
Hope you feel real good at the end of this podcast.
Yeah, make sure you're not driving while you're listening to this.
Yeah. But there is, like, take courage that just because change is about to happen and inevitable does not mean that it has to be devastating to you, even if it's a devastating change.
Right.
The whole concept of, existential counseling is that nothing should be able to change those things within your circle of control, because that's your power to control.
Yeah,
and
we're not We're not victims of our surroundings.
Yeah.
We have the ability to step in and make choice.
Yeah. The world can take your body, that can take your livelihood, it can take all of those things, but it shouldn't be able to impact your behaviors or thoughts and your feelings.
Yeah. Thanks for joining us.